I'm sorry about this, but I can't resist it. Now, you sort of fell out with Reform UK. I think it was back in early March, towards the end of February, that kind of thing. And one of the problems...
Well, I think correctly, they fell out with me.
Yeah, okay, I'll take that correction.
I still don't quite understand why, Kevin, but anyway, yeah.
Well, one of the bones of contention in your dispute was, we later learned, that Nigel Farage was unhappy with you espousing the idea of mass deportations. And as I say, I can't resist this, but take a look at this.
Will abolish indefinite leave to remain as a category in this country. The 800,000 people that will get indefinite leave to remain unless this policy is revoked tend to be young, tend to be low-skilled. They are going to be a huge burden on the state. What we do know is that 1 in 6 claimants...
So, yeah, that was him today. Here he was back during your days of reform. Check this out, Rupert.
We had a situation, a political difficulty within Reform UK. This does happen to parties. They do have difficulties and problems. We had a problem that one of our MPs, who's no longer an MP, was talking about deporting entire communities, including people who've been born here. And frankly, we found that unacceptable. And so I just did not want, I think you can quote me for another interview, to get dragged down the route of mass deportations at that stage.
Rupert, he also said that the problem with mass deportations that you were advocating was that it was just impossible. It was a practical impossibility. So what do you think when you see, as we played him today, what do you think when you see him today saying, yeah, mass deportations, we're going to get rid of all of them, yes, yes, yes? I mean, isn't this what he told you not to say?
Well, first of all, he's wrong. I'm still an MP. I may not be a Reform MP after they politically assassinated me, but I am an MP. And I mean, it's not unexpected, frankly, Kevin. I mean, Nigel is a politician who blows with the wind, and at the time he thought he had to sort of hold the centre ground in order to start to control and really challenge the Tory party. What he didn't realise is that actually the British people, the bedrock of decent people in this country, have had enough of mass immigration. I never talked about repatriation. I've always talked about deporting illegal migrants who are either arriving here, living here, foreign criminals, and basically starting there and then deciding where we go from there. Now, Nigel tried to edit a speech I gave in Kemi Badenoch's constituency in North Essex at the end of December. He tried to take out the word mass from my speech, where I was advocating mass deportation of illegal migrants. And he also tried to take out from my speech a piece about deporting the families of those who were perpetrating these vile crimes, these rape gangs. The men in the family clearly would have been known to the rest of their family, and if they were and the family did nothing about it, I was advocating that those people should also be deported if they were dual nationals or indeed foreigners. So I never talked about mass repatriation, so he got that completely wrong. But Nigel is economical with the truth. He has got a history of basically booting anybody out who he thinks is a challenge to him. And I think today, I was talking to my team, it's quite entertaining to watch him shift like the wind and mutate like the AIDS virus in terms of trying to follow the trend of what the British people, what he perceives the British people want. Now, that to me is not the hallmark of somebody who's going to lead us to the promised land. As I've said, my own personal opinion is Nigel can never be and should never be Prime Minister. He has too much history. Having worked with him, I don't think he's interested in policy. He's surrounded by very lightweight people. And my concern, and I expressed this to him, is that I didn't want to be next to him if we didn't have a plan when we won the election, because the British people deserve now to be run and managed and led by a government which effectively does have a plan, does embrace policies that are going to improve the the way in which our people live, and isn't just flip-flopping around trying to, if you like, aggrandize themselves. And I mean, Nigel can't lose. If he's elected as Prime Minister, he certainly won't lose. I question whether the British people will lose, and I conclude, in my view, they probably will do. So I think we want people of principle now. We've got enough liggers in Parliament, enough liggers in the civil service, enough dishonest people in the judiciary. What we now need, Kevin, we need some principle. And we haven't got very much principle in the country. That's our problem.
Yeah. But he is literally, he said, his quote about mass deportations that you were advocating. I don't remember you ever saying repatriating people who were born.
I've never said repatriating.
I know you haven't. You were talking about mass deportations. Today he talked about deporting hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants. Back in March, when you were falling out with him and Reform, Farage said that these mass deportations were, and I quote, literally impossible to do. And yet here he is today announcing that he will mass deport hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants. So what he didn't like you saying back in March, he is now saying himself. I mean, I know you find that sort of slightly amusing, but it must be slightly annoying as well.
No, we're not really. I mean, I think he was behind the curve, Kevin, and I think I've been entirely consistent in my view, and I will continue to be consistent, and I continue to believe that if we're going to run the country properly, we now need, or Reform needed policies. It needed a plan. It needed a shadow cabinet. It needed quality people. And the problem is Nigel is not surrounded by quality people. He's surrounded by lightweight people. And after what Zia Yusuf did to me, along with Lee Anderson, I would tell you those people should never be anywhere near power. And Nigel would have known what was going on. The whole thing was, as I say, an example of vile political assassination, which I'm afraid Nigel has done to many people, not least Kilroy Silk, but Ben Habib and Stephen Wolfe. Almost anybody who he perceives is either challenging him or in any way, crowding his... I liken him to a beech tree, Kevin. Nothing grows under a beech tree. So anything that tries to grow under Nigel's beech tree is poisoned by his leaves. So look, it's a very interesting point you raise, and we have been talking about it today, but am I irritated by it? Not particularly. It's pretty predictable.
Do you, Rupert? I mean, I must admit, I'm a supporter of, I admire Nigel Farage. I don't like to pin my flags or my colours to any particular political party. But whatever you think about him generally, do you approve of what he said today? Because I think I did.
I do. I agree. I mean, I've always said indefinite leave to remain. I mean, obviously, we've got two problems. We've got the illegal migrants, and we've got those people living here illegally, and we've got those foreign criminals in our prisons who are costing the taxpayer a fortune. But we've also got this legacy of the Blairite and Cameron and then May and then Boris of legal migration, which quite rightly they've identified as a problem. But if you're in business, you've got to identify those problems that you can deal with first. And while you're dealing with those, you have to make a plan for the next set of problems you've got to deal with. So I agree that indefinite leave to remain after Boris having promised to basically slash immigration, as did Cameron, as did May, they all did, and failed to do it, largely because of all the Blairite heffalump traps that were left by Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. They did nothing to repeal those, and therefore, in Boris's case, it accelerated. And I think Boris, again, is a man who's very good at writing articles, but is he a man of principle and depth? No, I don't think he is. I think some of his articles, if you read them, are very accurate. But is Boris capable of holding a view for more than a week? Probably not.
He's not a conservative. He's not a conservative, Rupert. He's a Lib Dem at best. Just to go back to...
I think I do agree with what they're saying today, and I think the majority of British people agree with what they're saying. But are you going to back people who basically are like straw in the wind? They're not the people who are going to change things for the better.
So even though, Nigel Farage, your position, I would imagine, is with Nigel and what he announced today, better late than never. So even though you and he are now agreeing on mass deportations, will there be any chance of you healing the rift at all?
I don't think so, Kevin. I don't like the way they behave, particularly, Yusuf made false allegations in a witness statement. So did Lee Anderson. We haven't heard the end of that yet. I've got a few plans for that. That'll become public in the end. It's basically what they did was vile, and to put the country in the hands of people who are capable of behaving like that would be a very dangerous thing. So, I have nothing against reform supporters. I think reform supporters and voters are fundamentally good people seeking change. I don't blame them for that, and they had no part in what happened. A lot of them, indeed, I think, are quite upset about what happened. So no, I don't think Nigel, myself, certainly not Yusuf, Anderson, and certainly not the sort of lightweights like, Dan Dukes, who basically is Nigel's spokesman. No, I could never work with people like that. And that doesn't mean to say that I couldn't, find a home amongst solid reform supporters, because I think a lot of them are very good people and they share my view that we need change. We need radical change. But we're not going to get that with the wrong leadership, Kevin.
Fair enough, Rupert. Let's.
No, I've set up Restore Britain, which we can talk about. I know we're here to talk ostensibly about, I think.
I need to. Well, we're going to do that in a minute. I need to get your take on what I think is the shameful recognition of Palestine by Britain, by Keir Starmer today. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Hamas have said it for us, haven't they, by claiming victory. I think what they did on October the 7th was vile. I think the prerequisite for any form of recognition of Palestine, and don't forget the Palestinian people elected Hamas, so they are not entirely clean in this situation. Until they've released every single hostage, we should be holding firm with Israel. I think what they did was vile, and whether or not you agree with what Israel's done subsequently, I think there is no excuse for holding hostages, many of whom have appeared emaciated and in ill health, some of whom have been murdered, many of whom after October the 7th were dragged through the streets and their bodies were mutilated by crowds. I mean, it's pretty vile stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
So no, I'm an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth merchant, and I honestly no. I mean, but Starmer, the Labour Party, our establishment, for some reason they have this sort of fixation with Islam, and I think in Labour's case, they think they rely on the Islamic vote. But as you've probably seen from what we've been posting, we don't think that they're going to keep the Islamic vote. We think that's on its way to Islamic independence and probably Jeremy Corbyn's party in the end.
Do you agree generally then, Rupert, with the charge that what Starmer has done in recognising Palestine, recognising the state of Palestine, God knows what that actually means, where are the borders, who runs it, but in recognising the state of Palestine, do you agree that that is rewarding terrorism, that is rewarding the Hamas atrocity?
Well, yes, Kevin. I mean, as we know, the real sort of arch enemy behind all this is not necessarily Hamas. Hamas is sponsored by Iran, as are Hezbollah. So, I think if you want an example of what happens in a Christian country which allows itself to be taken over by Muslims, just look at Lebanon. I mean, Lebanon, when it got its independence in 1948, was basically a very enlightened Christian country with the best universities in the Middle East. And once the Muslim population went over about 20%, you ended up with civil war, and Lebanon is now a Muslim country. So I think that is a warning sign for everybody. And if you don't love and respect your own culture, and I don't think our leaders love and respect the British people anymore, I think they seem to see the British people as the enemy. They should be serving the British people. It's the British people who built this country into what it is. It's the British people who pay the taxes that funds all these liggers, as I call them, who live on the back of the taxpayer. And there are far too many of them. They don't actually perform a function. They create all sorts of rules, regulations, and laws to justify what they do. But there are far too many of them. And they basically, in my view, they get between the wall and the wallpaper, and they don't help individual relationships throughout the country, which ultimately is the backbone of what we all are. And left to our own devices, I think we've got the best, most decent, most creative, most enterprising people on earth. But we've got the most appalling bunch of lightweights now who are running the country, and they are effectively damaging our interests collectively. So I think that's why I set up Restore Britain. The more people who support Restore Britain, the more we can influence the way in which things go, and hopefully influence it so that we end up with a government that does what it's supposed to do and governs in the interests of the electorate.
Absolutely, and as for what it's worth, the way I see it, this is just a reversion by Labour to old-style Corbynism, sort of hating Israel, anti-Semitism, always siding with Islam over Israel.
It's about the Muslim bloc vote, Kevin, largely.
But I mean, I think they pretty much had that anyway, and as you say, they're probably going to lose it to the independents at the next election. So it still begs the question, exactly what did Starmer think he's playing at with this? But we'll leave that.
Well, look, I've said to you before, Starmer is a Haldane Society, Pabloist, human rights lawyer, who is totally unfit to be in a position of power. I mean, the Fabian Society runs deep through the Labour Party, and nobody really talks about it enough. So everybody who's listening should research the Fabian Society, look at what Pabloism is, look what the Haldane Society is. I mean, the Haldane Society split in, I think, again, 1948, and Starmer's a member of the very, very communist arm of the Haldane Society. Basically, the sensible lawyers, they became part of a different sort of group.
I just think it's classic left-wing Labour. That's what they do.
You've got Hermer, you've got Starmer, you've got Philippe
Shabana Mahmood, and on the list go.
I mean, just look, Kevin, at the surrender on the Chagos Islands. I mean, as I've said, these people should be in the Tower of London.
I agree with you.
And my friend in the Mauritius tells me they're getting a tax cut on the back of the largesse of the British taxpayer.
Isn't that special? I'm still with Great Yarmouth's independent MP Rupert Lowe. Rupert, you've written to the Vice Chancellor of Newcastle University. Let's put this in context. Newcastle University has 28,000 students from 130 countries. Credit to diversity. Now, what you have written to the Vice Chancellor about is, in my view, the extraordinary decision by this university to impose on every single one of these 28,000 students halal meat, as in chicken, beef, lamb, halal, the Islamic way of preparing meat. Now, you quite rightly said, well, in my view, quite rightly said, why should the vast majority have to conform to the religious requirements of the minority? as you quite rightly say in your letter, you know, plenty of people do not want halal meat, whether for cultural, ethical or animal welfare reasons. A lot of us don't like the idea of slitting a poor live animal's throats and letting all the blood run out because apparently that keeps their God happy before you eat the meat. A lot of people don't like that idea. So have you had any response from Newcastle University about their strange decision to impose the religious requirements of a minority of students on the majority of students? Have you had any response yet?
Well, let me first of all pay credit to my team, which is growing fast thanks to our support from the British people. And in this case, Lewis Brackpool is running our whistleblowing line, because I think in Britain, we've still got a bedrock of fundamentally decent people who know the difference between right and wrong. So a lot of this is coming through Lewis Brackpool's whistleblowing line. And I would urge everybody, not just on religious slaughter or whether it's halal, kosher, whatever, any other form of wrongdoing by any state institution, please do contact Lewis and tell us about it. We've set up a way of effectively allowing people to do that without being outed. So you can feel free that it's in total confidence. And I can tell you, it isn't just Newcastle. There are other universities, there are other private schools, and we've even got one major government institution who we have now written to. They've tried to tell us a bit of a porky, but we've gone back because we've had further evidence that they were doing it. And we'll be able to hopefully come out with that too. But as you know, I'm a farmer, so I've raised and spoken about halal slaughter in Westminster Hall debates. The question really, Kevin, as you quite rightly say, is why is the default position apparently becoming that we all eat halal slaughtered or religious slaughtered meat rather than meat that's been slaughtered through our own abattoirs? And it appears that the easy position for the slaughterhouses, and now I would say to everybody, unless you know the slaughterhouse code on a lot of the meat that you buy in supermarkets, the chance is you're buying and eating religiously slaughtered meat, because there is now a regulatory arbitrage. So our abattoirs are more highly regulated in terms of our slaughter, where they use a huge dose of electrocution to kill the animal before it's slaughtered, whereas in halal they have this sort of front where they pretend to give it a small stun, which actually very often gives them an epileptic fit. So that when they actually cut their throat, the blood is still being pumped out. So it's a front. So my view is that the meat we eat should default to being what 94% of us are used to eating, which is normally slaughtered meat in our own abattoirs. But what's happening is, in more and more institutions, the default position is halal is being served because it's easier, because there's a regulatory arbitrage. And ultimately, you know, we haven't so far had transparent labeling, which allows people to make a decision for themselves. So my own view is, first of all, we're going to get an answer from all these people once we've identified that it is happening. And we are getting whistleblowers coming forward, so we know it is happening. And it's happening.
And it's definitely happening at Newcastle University. We know that.
In our opinion, yes, and Southampton University and other private schools, which again, we're getting more and more information on this. But the default position, as I say, should be, is we should label everything very clearly, so that those people who do have an objection to eating either halal or kosher or any other form of religiously slaughtered meat should have the opportunity of being absolutely clear and transparent about what they're eating. But I can tell you, you need to know the slaughterhouse code before you can tell that now. And it's actually a national scandal. So I've said to my wife, do not buy any meat from any supermarket, only the local butcher if you know how it's been slaughtered. Because I object. If you ever watch a video on religiously slaughtered.
Well, a lot of people want to end halal slaughter.
It's pretty vile. I have no problem with Muslims eating halal, but I have a problem with the default position being that the British public are eating halal meat. I think that is dishonest.
As you say in your letter, Rupert, universities should not be in the business of enforcing religious dietary standards on everyone. The answer is straightforward. Restore non-halal options immediately, clearly label what is halal and what is not, and let people choose for themselves. What the entire student body, all 28,000 of them, are being subjected to here is the subordination of everyone else to the requirements of Islam.
Well, Islam, and in terms of kosher actually has no stun at all. It's literally a cut throat. So it's religiously slaughtered meat, you're right. What's happening is the minority position is being deviously forced upon the majority. So personally, I think labeling first, so people can make their decision. But in the end, why should 94% of the country have to suffer this when they're used to basically eating meat killed in our abattoirs, which is, yes, slaughtered, but slaughtered in a more
humane way. Yeah, exactly right. Well, listen, Rupert, will you keep us in touch with whatever response you have from Newcastle University and indeed other bodies that are imposing halal meat on their customers? Will you let us know?
We'll keep you posted, Kevin, but we want to be fair to everybody, and we want to, once they've answered the question, I think a lot of them are reluctant to answer because it will set a huge hair running and it will cause them problems. So we are finding it difficult to get blood out of the stone at this stage.
You can put it that way.
We will get it.
The State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona last night. 63,000 people packed into that vast arena to pay their last respects to Charlie Kirk, who was, of course, assassinated a couple of weeks back in Utah. The Conservative campaigner close to Donald Trump, close to J.D. Vance, close to this American government. Donald Trump was there, J.D. Vance was there, anybody who was anybody was there. 63,000 in the stadium. They think as many as 40,000 more may have flocked to an additional space for the overflow crowd. So a huge turnout, well, let's welcome someone who was there, who was a good friend of Charlie Kirk, a good friend of this show as well, Errol Moorcoach from the Republican Overseas Organisation. Welcome, Errol. Before we get your thoughts, let's remind ourselves a couple of the highlights. A load of speakers paid tribute to poor Charlie. Well, first of all, this is his heartbroken wife finding it in her heart to forgive his killer.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men just like the one who took his life. On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Astonishing, absolutely astonishing. A devout Christian, Erica, as was Charlie, of course. The president, Donald Trump, did not find it in his heart to forgive the assassinator of Charlie Kirk. Here's the president.
Did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica.
And he went on to say that he doesn't forgive Tyler Robinson. That was the name of that little tow rag who killed poor Charlie. Well, look, Errol, you were there. I mean, from what I see, vast. What an astonishing event. Tell us what it was like to be there.
It was incredible. It was, I can't really place a point or time, and I've talked with other people, especially people older than me, and especially in religious orders and political movements that have ever had an experience like this. This was a Trump rally mixed with the Holy Spirit, mixed with just quite a lot of just pure unadulterated love. people praying together, people welcoming each other, and showing that Charlie's memory obviously wasn't extinguished on that day. Oftentimes people brought up the biblical phrase, that, paraphrase, and effectively, the tyrant when he dies is forgotten, the martyr when he dies is, he's just started to be remembered. And I think it became very clear, especially with the leadership that Erica Kirk showed there, to extend forgiveness, something that, I think all of us were moved by, regardless of the different abilities of people to do what she did. All of the emotion there was of emotion of love, of forgiveness, of kindness, of compassion, and it was what Charlie would have wanted. And on top of it all, after losing their founder and leader, Turning Point USA pulled off the biggest event in their ever history. So I think that the future of this organization not only is in strong hands and in capable hands, but it's also going to run amok compared to what they thought killing Charlie Kirk would do to the Turning Point organization.
And that's what Erica said. She now runs Turning Point, her husband's organization. And she said after the assassination that these people, the killer of my husband, have no idea what they have unleashed. No idea. And I think it's going to make the movement twice as strong, if not stronger. Am I right?
I think you're absolutely right. And what's incredible to see and warms my heart is that people are doubling down on peaceful dialogue. You're seeing young people applying to open new chapters. I think they're up to 63,000 new chapter applications. You're seeing revival in the Turning Point UK chapter. They're getting back on their feet now that we've got all this support. We have Elon Musk coming in and saying that he is going to be providing support. And then you saw Elon actually, it was quite nice. We saw Elon walk in, and all of a sudden him and Trump are making peace, and Elon tweets for Charlie. And one of the last things, not tweets, X'd, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And one of the last things that Charlie had talked about was that he needed Trump and Elon to make up and
they shook hands, didn't they?
They shook hands, and Trump posted, Trump and the White House and Elon posted. So, that's a great thing just for everybody kind of realizing these petty differences we've had. There's been a lot of squabbles inside the Conservative Party, whether that be about Israel, Palestine, Ukraine, and tariffs, all things. But when somebody like this, one of the good guys is shot down, actually bearing witness to his beliefs, and without any fear, despite the fact of the threats against him. You have a situation for the first time in American history that you have a First Amendment civil rights leader executed. And that stopped the U.S. government to the day where every single meaningful person in the United States, from the Secretary of War to the President to all of our cabinet members, were there in that room. That was the safest room in the world to be in. We had F-16s above us, attack choppers. You were not going to get anywhere close to that building. That building was protected by the full might of the U.S. Army and Jesus Christ. And that's what we saw on that.
Going to move on to something that's just broken. This is breaking news. Bad news for comedy. Jimmy Kimmel's show has been reinstated to ABC. So if you want to be bored and put to sleep late at night, all you Americans, it's back. Jimmy Kimmel Live is back on ABC. Do you think ABC have crumbled, have capitulated to all these famous people saying this was an attack on freedom of speech? Because what I thought about it was this was a responsible broadcaster saying this presenter lied to the people of America. He said that Tyler Robinson was part of Donald Trump's group, was a MAGA supporter. This was a lie. A responsible broadcaster can't allow its star presenters to lie to the people, can it?
I agree that it was a lie, and a scurrilous, low-down one at that, and that is the type of person Jimmy Kimmel is. He's somebody who gets 1 million less views than Stephen Colbert got, and his average demographic is 68 to 69. No disrespect to anybody in that demographic, but the idea that these people are touching young voters is kind of, counterintuitive to who they are. I will say this, Sinclair Broadcasting took him off, and they're going to put the 1-hour Charlie Kirk special. That's the equivalent of a spanking from an adult to a child. I guess maybe Jimmy Kimmel has some sort of contractual, a situation here where he can live out his contract, but I think he's on borrowed time, not because he's a foul-mouthed person, not because he's a hateful liar, but because fundamentally he sucks at his job. He's not good at
he's so bad, isn't he?
So time will tell. Maybe he'll run out of his contract, but they're not going to renew him. He gets less views than YouTubers. It's not a business model.
Yeah,
So,
and all for a measly 48 million bucks a year. I mean,
yeah.
it's just not fair, is it? I mean, I was about to say Jimmy Kimmel's about as funny as a funeral, but that wouldn't really be appropriate given what we're talking about. But you know what I mean. He's not funny, and I think you and I discussed this last week. What I don't understand, I've only got a few seconds left, is why all these late night TV talk show hosts in America have turned their programs into the sort of television equivalent of the Democrat convention. I don't understand it. People don't want these politics, their political views imposed on them. Watch this. This is a woman called Charlotte Hayes, and she is a left-wing activist on TikTok, a sort of left-wing influencer. This is what she posted on TikTok.
Just got shot in the neck at his own debate rally. I try to avoid American politics if possible, but I've opened X to a bunch of little crying and whinging about how political violence is never the answer. These people are gunning for politics that is inherently violent to its people. These people are gunning for politics that are inherently violent to a population. To marginalised people, to people who need access to healthcare. This is the same across the West. This isn't just the US. This is England too. I'm sick of this idea that you can't meet violence with violence. If somebody was smacking you in the face in the corner of a room over and over, you're going to hit them back. You have to. You're not getting out of that unless you do. These people do not care if you live or die. They don't. As long as you can work for them and make them money, and once you're useless, they don't care. They want you to die. Why is anyone condemning that? Kill them all. Kill.
So she finishes that diatribe. This is obviously in response to Charlie Kirk's, the Conservative commentator, Conservative campaigners' assassination a couple of weeks ago. So she finishes that diatribe against right-wing people who've been saying, look, violence is not the answer. It's not the answer. Shooting Charlie Kirk dead is not the answer. That's not political debate. Well, she says, no, I'm sick of these right-wingers saying violence is not the answer. Basically, she says, effing kill them all, kill them all. What was the result of that? You know, you might think that's just almost as bad as what Lucy Connolly posted. Is she going to go to jail? Was she arrested? Is she going to get fined? Is she going to get a caution? No. The Kent police went round to her house, had a little word with her, said, you know, take that post down and, you know, just don't do that again. And they concluded that no crime had been committed. Well, why didn't they conclude with Lucy Connolly that no crime had been committed? Why was Graham Linehan arrested for allegedly inciting violence? You know, when all he said was punch him in the balls. It was light-hearted, it was a joke. And yet this woman says, effing kill them all. And all she gets is a visit from the cops saying, oh, come on, Charlotte, take it down. You know, there you go. No crime has been... It's a classic two-tier policing. Looks to me like woke coppers. They'll come down on right-wingers like a ton of bricks, but if you're left-wing, they'll let you off. Let's talk to, from the Free Speech Union, Connie Shaw. Hello, Connie.
Hi, Kevin.
I'm right here, aren't I? I mean, why have the police... They investigated this, they went to her house, they concluded that no crime had been committed. Well, she's saying kill them all. If Lucy Connolly's going to go to jail for similarly, if you like, she didn't say kill them, she just said it was accused of inciting violence. If Graham Linehan's going to be arrested for inciting violence for just saying punch pretend men in the balls, why is this woman being let off, do you think? It's two-tier policing, isn't it?
Well, the perception certainly is that there's a two-tier justice system, and I think that the public can't be blamed for having that perception. But I think the difference here, and there are often these direct comparisons made between two different cases, whether it's Charlotte Hayes in this case and Graham Linehan or Lucy Connolly. But the difference with Graham Linehan and Lucy Connolly is that both Lucy and Graham were arrested on suspicion of stirring up hatred on the basis of a characteristic. There are 3 characteristics that you can stir up hatred on in England, and that is sexual orientation, religious, and racial. whereas Charlotte Haynes was not talking about people from any of those three groups. So there is an issue here with our legislation, and that's why, one of the reasons why Kemi Badenoch's appointed Toby Young to do this policy review. That doesn't mean that people should be going to prison for things that Charlotte said. I think that none of these people should be going to prison. And actually, the fact that the police decided that it wasn't a criminal matter raises questions about why they went to Charlotte's house in the first place. If you compare it to our member, Deborah Anderson, who you saw recently in that video that went viral on
the American lady in Thames Valley, yes, of course.
Yeah. How the policeman came round and she asked him, is this a criminal offence? Have I broken the law? Am I being arrested? To which he said no. So if the police know that it's not a crime, they've seen what Deborah has posted on the internet, they saw what Charlotte's video was, but they're still going to people's houses. Look, I completely accept what Charlotte said was disgusting. I think it's the left are a laughing stock when it comes to these things. They seriously believe that words are violence to the point where they think actual violence is the response. I completely accept that. I still don't think the police should have any business in going around to people's houses for things that are not criminal matters. The police should not be going around to people's houses to tell them to delete posts or to tell them to apologise to people. Deborah Anderson was told that if she didn't apologise to the person who had complained about being upset by something she had posted, then she would be taken for interview. We don't know what happened in the conversation between the police and Charlotte Haynes, but she may well have had the same message from the police, and she deleted the post.
It could well be, though, Connie, that clearly somebody did complain about what Charlotte Haynes posted, and as you say, they've gone round to say, "Oh, you shouldn't really do that." Well, she wasn't told to apologise to anyone, though.
Well, I don't know what went on during.
The police don't say anything about telling her to apologise. They say that they advised her to take it down, and they had a little word with her.
Of course, and that would have been that is very similar to the conversation that Deborah had. Obviously, we know exactly what happened in the conversation that Deborah had with the police officer because she filmed all 6 minutes of it. We don't know whether the police would have come out and said that they told Deborah to apologise. I mean, there were various things that police officer said, was caught saying on video, which I have a feeling that Thames Valley Police would not want to say out loud because it's so embarrassing for them. So we don't know really the full extent of what the police said to Charlotte in this case, but the point is, no police should be going around to people's houses for things that are not criminal matters. 75% of burglaries go unsolved in this country. 1 in 5 shoplifting offences are attended to. I know that it's horrible when people say things like this. I understand the emotion. I felt just as disgusted, I'm sure, as the next person did when they saw what this woman, Charlotte Haynes, said. But I do not think it's the matter for the police. The police got the decision right this time. I still don't think they should be going to her house, but the question is, why are they not getting it right every time? I think there is something to be said about the way that the police have been captured by certain organisations such as Stonewall, which does, in my opinion, help in getting people like Graham Linehan arrested. But the other thing, that there are issues with our legislation. Again, Charlotte Haynes was not, you couldn't possibly say that she was trying to stir up hatred on the basis of those 3 characteristics.
Name those characteristics again, Connie, please.
So you can stir hatred up on the basis of sexual orientation, religious hatred, or racial. So none of those 3 categories could be used in Charlotte's case. But again, going back to Graham, the police tried to use sexual orientation as a reason that they arrested him, even though he was talking about men in women's toilets. In Scotland, it's an offence to stir up hatred on the basis of a trans status, so they may have got a bit confused about that. But clearly the police do not understand the law. That's one of the reasons why we're suing the Met Police for the wrongful arrest of Graham Linehan, and also potentially defamation, because they said that originally they said that he incited violence. That's not a crime. There's encouraging violent disorder, but inciting violence is not a phrase used in the statutory books here. So the police are getting very confused, but to make it clear, Charlotte's case, what Charlotte Haynes said could not have been considered to be breaking a law in the way that what Graham said or what Lucy said. I don't think we should have hate laws in this country. This is the issue with hate laws, is that it's so subjective. And that's why Toby's review is going to be absolutely crucial to getting these things nailed down, so we stop having this absolutely ludicrous situation where the perception to the public feels as though, and I do understand it, that it depends on your political views as to whether the police decide to take action. That's not the truth the entire time, but I can completely understand why it feels that way, and that's why Toby's review will be very important.
I agree with that, and I also agree. I can't stand hate laws. I hate hate crimes. I just think they're a serious infringement on free speech. But there is a disparity. There is a difference, isn't there, between the way Deborah Anderson was treated the video came out last week, and the way that Charlotte Hayes has been treated here, insofar as there must have been a complaint. There must have been a complaint about her kill them all TikTok post. They haven't asked her to apologise to anyone. They just said investigators examined the content and concluded no offences were committed. The person who posted the video was visited by officers and received words of advice. They subsequently deleted the post. So why is it? Well, they're saying that. Why was Deborah told to apologise and Charlotte wasn't?
We don't know that Charlotte wasn't told to apologise. She may well have been told to apologise to a specific person that made the complaint. We only know exactly what was said to Deborah because of the video. Neither of them should have been told to apologise. It is not the police's job to go around telling us to apologise to one another. And
I mean, will Toby, do you think, recommend that you should be able to say on Twitter or TikTok, kill them all? Kill them all, kill them all.
I imagine what Toby will recommend is that we need something like the First Amendment in this country. Yeah. And under the First Amendment in the US, something can only be considered to be inciting violence if the speech is proven to both be intended to and likely to cause imminent lawless action. And it has to fulfill both strands. It has to be both intended to and likely to cause unlawful action. So in order for that, for any speech to be considered inciting to violence, is a very narrow category. Yeah. So in some situations, it will be the case in America, and the origins of that case, Brandenburg versus Ohio, is a really disturbing case of a KKK group or a white supremacist group. I don't know whether they were connected to the Ku Klux Klan necessarily, but a white supremacist group marching through an area calling for what can be perceived as acts of violence towards certain minorities. But it was ruled that was a right that they were granted from the First Amendment because they were found to not be intending to and likely to be causing imminent unlawful action. So it will mean that people say horrible things, as in people always say horrible things. But I think that people think that if people are suddenly allowed to say horrible things, that suddenly loads more will be said. I think most people are good people. It just means that people like Lucy Conley and people like Charlotte Haynes will not be being locked up because they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I agree with that, but the sort of the overall impression that people have, including me, and I agree with all the points you've made, by the way, Connie, but the overall impression that we have is that the police in so many instances seem to have turned themselves into the kind of wokery enforcement squad. There is a difference, there's definitely a difference between the way a lot of coppers treat left-wing people and a lot of coppers treat right-wing people. I think that's at the essence of the problem that we've got here. Graham Linehan, by any sensible standards, didn't do anything wrong. You know, is it really inciting violence to say, oh, if some bloke walks into a women's changing room, punch them in the balls? It was like a joke. But there's no common sense in the way the police approached him. Had he have been some left-winger, then I suspect the police's approach would be different. There is a problem with the way the police approach both sides of the political divide. Would you accept that?
Oh, absolutely, Kevin. I think specifically as well, a very good example of this is the trans issue. If you look at the amount of death threats, rape threats that gender critical women receive. If you go to any trans pride march, and I invite you to look around at the placards being held by these so-called protesters, say, for example, some absolute classics: the only good turf is a dead turf, decapitate turfs, every time you punch a turf, trans kids get more rights. They're all ones that I have seen, and I know that gender critical people report these to the police and nothing is done the majority of the time. But there seems to be a very powerful group of some trans activists who seem to have the police in the palm of their hand. It's known that there's a certain figure called Lindsay Watson, a disgraced...
Oh, I know her, yeah, the former copper, yeah.
Who threatens judicial review against...
I say I know her, I know him, I meant.
Him for not taking action against people he alleges to have committed a crime against him.
Yeah.
And he's an ex-police copper. He knows how the system works.
Yeah.
And so it seems that there are certain people within the trans movement who are really using it to go after people that they disagree with. And it seems the police often just toe in line with them. It's outrageous. And there needs to be a serious shake-up of the way that the police officers are trained. They've just got their priorities wrong.
I agree.
The idea that we saw on video a police officer in a poor woman's house telling her that it was his job today not to look after people who have been murdered, or obviously they're dead, or go after people who have murdered someone, or to care for people who have been raped or solve rapes, or go after people who've burgled people's houses. Today his job was to come round and tell her to apologise to someone that she'd upset on Facebook.
Absolutely. But what worries me about people like him is that he has no idea what his job is, because he's grown up in a kind of new kind of police force which seems to be getting everything wrong. What this story is, we'll have a listen to Donna from my show last night in just a second. This is what the local authority stand accused of is A, ignoring the local campaign, ignoring the impassioned campaign by these local people, just trampling over them and saying no, the mega mosque goes ahead. And B, showing favouritism towards Muslim people, towards Muslims. These are the accusations. Donna Hill spoke to me last night. She absolutely denied it's anything to do with racism. She says it's just inappropriate in their little town. Massive mosque and 11 car parking spaces, 250 worshippers. Doesn't really stack up, does it? Let's have a listen to Donna from last night.
Nothing to do with, none of us are racist. It's the location and just the size of the building. It's an absolute eyesore. As you can see, it's hideous. It's so out of place.
And the council, you presumably have been campaigning against this for some time.
Yeah.
The council have just essentially just ignored you.
Yeah, it's all been done very quietly without residents having, really knowing anything about it. I think it was first passed in 2022 during lockdown, and it seems to have just seemed to be adding things, but without anyone knowing about it. Local residents were really unaware until it started being built.
And are you still? I mean, have you given up hope, or are you still?
No, we've appointed a barrister now who's looking into the plans, because we do believe there's been a lot of corruption along the way with the plans, and also he's looking into the highways and seeing about the safety of it as well.
But it is a powerful argument that you say this constituency where you live, Dalton-in-Furness, 1% of the population are Muslim.
Yeah.
So why would they require this enormous mosque? Well, obviously, Andrew, she did answer at that point, no idea, and that's what they're so furious about. And what they're saying is, it's quite right. It's nothing to do with racism or Islamophobia, but we don't understand why a rural area, lovely little town called Dalton-in-Furness, on the edge of the Lake District. You saw the beautiful countryside that this mega mosque is set in. We don't understand why an area with a 1% Muslim population is having this massive mosque imposed on it. They say this looks like a classic case of, kind of strange favouritism towards Islam. What are your thoughts here?
I can understand why the doctors at the General Hospital in Barrow, in fairness, want a place of worship. I mean, I'm a Christian and Catholic. I can fully understand that. The nearest mosque to them is around 50 miles away in Lancaster. It's over an hour's drive. It's impractical. So I completely understand that. And we also, in this country, Kevin, have the most arcane and almost impossible to navigate planning laws. And in general, I'm in favour of liberalisation, but I've looked on the map and I just can't for the life of me work out why you would place a new building there. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all. And then when you read into it that there could be up to 250 people there, now, okay, some of those are going to be children. So, but even so, you would think maybe 80 to 100 cars could possibly be wanting to park somewhere so people can go and worship in the mosque. And there's car parking for 11. Now, it's not quite in the middle of nowhere, Kevin. It's near Dalton and Furness. It's on the outskirts. But even so, people are going to be travelling for miles around and converging in this area, and there's going to be nowhere to park. And now, if you were to try and build a new housing development there to provide homes for local families, if you were trying to build a small nuclear reactor to provide power for hundreds of thousands of people, you would never get planning permission. So it is quite a mystery why this one has been granted planning permission on this site.
Westmoreland and Furness Council, for they are the authority in charge here. Westmoreland and Furness Council said, I read this out last night as well, but this is their statement. We support people's right to practice their religion free from harassment and abuse. That's the beginning of their statement. I don't know what on earth that has got to do with whether or not you're going to build a mega mosque. So thank you very much, Westmoreland and Furness Council, for that excellent piece of virtue signalling, halo polishing. We support people's right to practice their religion free from harassment and abuse. You're supposed to support people's right to practice their religion free from harassment and abuse.
So do you, Kevin, and so do I.
Of course, you're supposed to. So that is nonsense. But then it goes on to say, noting that the prayer centre has followed all necessary procedures to gain planning permission. Well, I'm sure they have. But this is in the face of an impassioned campaign by the local people who say this is an inappropriate location. Because they don't understand why it will be in the middle of their community when their community only contains 1% of Islamic people. And B, as you just alluded to, 250 worshippers, that's going to take a lot of cars, and they've only got spaces for 11 cars. This will cause traffic chaos, I would suggest. I mean, I can give you a sort of slight story of my own local mosque, which is in Regent's Park in central London. Lovely building, and lots of wonderful people worship there pretty much every day. But on the big worshipping days, the cars around Regent's Park, it's absolutely packed. Nothing wrong with that because there's plenty of spaces for them to go. But in a place like this, I think it'll cause chaos.
In central London, you've also got an excellent public transport system with buses and
yes,
tubes.
good point. Good point.
And so that eases the traffic problems. Whereas in a place like this, you don't have that. I'll be surprised there's even a reliable bus service most days. But what I can't understand is why a brownfield site somewhere that was close to the hospital, because we are talking about hospital doctors who are wanting this built, who are working at Barrow and Furness General Hospital, why there can't be a brownfield site somewhere in Barrow that could accommodate this. That just doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
And I mean, I'm not quite sure what these doctors have particularly got to do with it. OK, they're Muslim doctors.
Well, they wanted building. They're behind this particular Islamic centre. They're the driving force behind it, according to the Telegraph.
You're right. They are. But I find that in itself quite strange. But as I say,
well, I get the impression, Kevin, that basically the Islamic community in that area are those people who work at the hospital.
Yeah,
that's what I read from the Telegraph.
They're the 1%. Yes.
Yes, they are pretty much. Yes.
Yeah, but as I say, this arguably, I'm not necessarily saying this, but some of the locals say that this just looks like an authority that has shown definite favoritism towards Muslims, towards Islamic people. And we know the syndrome we're talking about, you know. You know, we've got Westmoreland and Furness's Council. By the way, did I mention that they support people's right to practice their religion free from harassment and abuse? Whoop-de-doo, well done, well done. You know, you just wonder, and this is what the local people are saying, this council was too afraid to say no in case it was charged with Islamophobia. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I think that is probably true. I think it's certainly got, the argument has certainly got some merit, because if they had turned it down, that's exactly what they would have been accused with. And we know throughout all the red gangs scandals that we've seen, it's always been about not trying to upset the local community, not stir up community tensions. These are the sort of things that have been said as to the reason why there were cover-ups. And I think it could even be as simple as that. Well, if we turn down this planning application, it looks like we're being Islamophobic. This is what we're going to be accused with. I think we'll have to treat this very, very carefully. And yes, and it's gone through. And that could well be the case. Of course, I don't know, but it is plausible.
Well, that's what the protesters feel. They feel that this is the case and that their wishes, their impassioned campaign has been completely ignored. I mean, this statement from Westmoreland and Furness Council, by the way, they support people's right to practice their religion free from harassment and abuse, because they're so you know they're wonderful people. What they should have included in this statement is some reference to the campaign by the local people. But no, no, they just say, oh, you know, they followed the necessary procedures to gain planning permission. I mean, that is a pretty nebulous thing to say about a massive building for 250 people in the middle of a few fields, isn't it? That's a very nebulous thing to say.
Yes, it is. And of course, when they say that all the planning rules were followed, nobody really knows whether that's true or not, because no one understands the planning rules.
Well, also, I believe, you know, I'm no expert on planning rules, but consultation is supposed to be part of the process, isn't it? And the local people just don't feel that they've been properly consulted, that they've been ridden roughshod over.
Yeah, and that could well be true, and I don't blame them for feeling like that. But as you've said, you're not an expert on planning. I'm not an expert on planning. But the fact is, if you want to actually build anything in this country, because of the planning rules, you have to get an expert on planning to be able to understand the system. So if the council turns around and says, we followed all the rules, well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Nobody would actually know.
No, and as I say, some reference to the people who've campaigned against this would be nice. I want to stress, and I'm sure you agree with me, Andrew, that this is not about sort of saying, oh, these Muslims shouldn't have a place of worship. Of course they should. Of course they should.
Well, that's why I said, why can't there be some sort of suitable building actually in the bigger town of Barrow-in-Furness?
Exactly.
There must be something there, or something on the outskirts, somewhere there's a more appropriate location than this, and certainly with more than 11 car parking spaces.
It's just about location. You know, of course they should have a place of worship, a nice new place of worship. I don't actually think it's that bad a looking building, except for where it is. It stands out like a carbuncle.
Yeah, if this had been in a town, Kev, I think it would have probably just blended in pretty much.
Exactly.
Because it's not particularly ugly. I mean, I've seen these reports where people are saying it's a monstrosity. I don't think it is a monstrosity, but put in that position where it is on the outskirts of a small town in some fields, yeah, it stands out like a sore thumb. It
does become a monstrosity. It becomes an eyesore because of the setting. So that's what we're talking about, and that's what the local people want to know. Why? Look at it. It's out of you know, it's just ridiculous. But construction, as you can see, has started, but they have hired a top barrister, so their campaign continues apace. And even people in the campaign, we spoke to quite a few today, are worried about putting their head above the parapet in case they're charged with Islamophobia. So what I think we have to worry about culturally in this country is the stasis that people sort of self-impose, they self-censor. because of the terror of being accused of Islamophobia. I mean, it's a different kind of story, but that was the story of the rape gang scandal, wasn't it? People in power, yes, coppers, social workers, teachers, being afraid to speak out and take action about this awful raping and drugging and torturing of young, vulnerable white girls in case they were accused of Islamophobia. This fear of being accused of Islamophobia, I think, is a problem in this country.
Yes, it is. No, I completely agree with you, and it seems to hit the headlines a lot. I'll tell you what doesn't hit the headlines, Kevin, is that tens of thousands of Christians are being slaughtered in Africa, and you never even hear about it.
Well, there you go. As another, it's two-tier religious stories there.
Well, I think it is because you know, Islamophobia seems to hit the headlines all the time. You've got council officials, police officers all worried about it and things like that. But you can say anything that you like about Christianity, as an example. You seem to be able to say anything you like about Judaism, and everyone's got to accept it. But you make a mild criticism of Islam, and you get Islamophobia thrown at you. And I mean, we've got the right to criticise any religion, including my own. I'm a pretty devout Catholic. But, you know, I do accept that everyone's got the right to take the mickey out of it if they want to.
Yeah, I'll give you Sadiq Khan, Sir Sadiq Khan, as he's hilariously known these days, the London mayor, throwing the kind of racism, sexism, Islamophobic book at Donald Trump today. It's called him every single name under the sun, but one of them, of course...
You have to get your bingo card.
Yeah. It's a, ding, house! But yeah, I mean, throwing the Islamophobic card at Donald Trump, which rather ridiculously, if you ask me, but... yeah, there you have a case in a case of what we're talking about. This seems to be day in, day out. We are confronted with the escalating insanity of this mad migrant crisis. So first up, let's talk about, let's give credit to ITV News here. They're the first media outlet to board a deportation plane. This was a plane returning 47, they're called FNOs, Foreign National Offenders. These are immigrants who have committed serious crimes, and we're talking about murderers, rapists, violent criminals, gun criminals, gangsters, serious, dangerous criminals. ITV got onto this plane. 47 of these people were being flown back to Romania, their home country. To get them to the airport, Robert, it took each one of them, not only to get them to the airport, but also on the plane, had to have 3 Home Office guards, security people with them. So altogether, apparently, it took 100 staff to get all of them to the airport. And then each one of these 47 had 3 escorts, security escorts from the Home Office with them on this plane. So the cost is astronomical. But it gets worse. On the plane, each one of these, fiends, monsters, was handed a cash card, £2,000 each, for them to cash when they got to Romania, present from us, from British taxpayers. This is to encourage them to go back. So in order to get them to agree to be deported, we gave them £2,000 each. Shabana Mahmood later said, well, it's not a good look out of context. It's not a good look at all, Shabana, never mind out of context. She says this is actually cheaper than keeping them in prison or letting them stick around to fight their cases to stay. My contention would be just deport them and don't give them £2,000. This is absolutely ludicrous. It's deranged. Before we get your comments on this, Robert, let's have a look at some of ITV News' excellent report. Well, first of all, let's have a look at these people being deported on the plane. Let's have a look.
Capture compliant migrants being given bank cards preloaded with money, up to £2,000 each, to encourage and aid their resettlement in Romania.
Just to remind you, those people receiving your money, £2,000 each, are murderers, are rapists, are drug dealers, are gun criminals. You know, really, really serious criminals. £2,000 each. Later, in fairness, Shabana Mahmood, the new tough-talking, tough as nails, hard-talking, hard as nails Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, she gave an interview in which she said, out of context, this is not a good look, as I just said. Never mind out of context, Shabs. Let's have a look at what the Home Secretary had to say.
Well, look, I think out of context, obviously, it's not great. It doesn't look good. But the reality is that a voluntary removal is actually cheaper for the British taxpayer. So it has long been the case, certainly since 2006, that we do offer financial packages as an incentive to people to drop their claims, to drop the attempts that they will make to try and stay within our country and to board a flight and to leave.
Well, you know, that's her case, fair enough. But every person in this country, well, you and me definitely, but I would say that every British citizen, knowing that their tax money is being spent on paying murderers and rapists £2,000 to leave the country, will say, never mind it being a good look a bad look out of context. It's a bad look totally. And if we're a nation that can't deport murderers and rapists, dangerous criminals, without giving them money, what kind of a nation are we?
This is honestly an absolutely farcical story, and I'm actually surprised in that footage we weren't seeing them in a first-class lounge with their feet up and sort of air hostesses bringing them champagne. It's a ridiculous situation, and the scheme under which this is done, which is the voluntary return scheme, was something that was sort of introduced in the early part of the century, and I think it was really some kind of really clever Whitehall Mandarin looking at the current legal situation, realising that actually there's so many opportunities for foreign national offenders to challenge the actual deportation that they just came up with this solution of let's just throw taxpayers' money at it. And unfortunately, that seems to be the solution that a lot of civil servants have to a lot of problems. But this really is a really, really horrid state of affairs. You know, I'm very glad these individuals have actually been removed because, you know, frankly, we've got 20,000 roughly foreign national offenders who should be deported, who are eligible for deportation but are still sort of roaming the streets next to communities, living next to schools, living next to friends and families and whatever. But this is not the way to go about it. If you really are struggling to remove an individual because of their ability to appeal and to challenge, then you have to change the law and you have to remove that ability for them to actually put up a fight. And we need to start entering a position where if a foreign national is given any kind of sentence, then we have arrangements, reciprocal arrangements with their country of origin where they serve their prison sentence in that country's prisons. They don't burden and blight our prisons and inflict £50,000 a year cost on the British taxpayer. They don't clog up spaces and lead to prison overcrowding, and they are just gone and got rid of and then never to return.
And let's think about the cost of this one flight. Don't forget, I assume these flights are leaving fairly regularly, one would hope. I mean, Labour likes to boast that they regularly send these voluntary deportees back to their home countries. What do they call it? They've got a name for it, haven't they? The facilitated return scheme. It's a euphemism if ever I heard one. Well, this one flight, some of these people were real troublemakers, and they needed as many as a dozen of these Home Office security escorts for one migrant. So, as I said earlier, it's estimated that to get these 47 deportees to the airport required 100 staff. Once they get onto the plane, each one of them has to have 3 Home Office escorts. Now, apart from giving them £2,000, don't forget we're paying their tickets. Now, I don't know how much it costs to go to Romania, what, £500, something like that. So think about that. 47 deportees, £500 a ticket, each one of them 3 escorts, £500 a ticket. Then we give each one of these 47 crooks, criminals, £2,000. Then all the escorts have to fly back to Britain, another flight. You know, the cost is just astronomical.
There needs to be so much more sort of productivity injected into how we actually deliver across all elements of our border enforcement, but in particular when it comes to actually enforced returns and the removals of individuals. I think that this is a large problem that we do have, not just when it comes to foreign nationals, but offenders, but to illegal migrants as well, in that it's just so cumbersome, and the way in which we approach this issue, 3 people to a man, is so unproductive and really sort of sets us back, actually, and puts us in a position where we're almost thinking, it's not worth deporting because we'll have to pay all these costs and pay all these associated things. I think it's a really, really bad state of affairs. I mean, and actually, frankly, if you think about it, if these people are going through this scheme where, whilst they're serving some of their sentence, they've volunteered to be removed under this scheme, you wouldn't think that they're sort of as much of a flight risk as someone that's sort of going kicking and screaming as well, because they put their hand up and been told, you'll get £2,000 to reintegrate you into Romania when you get back. And then the bigger picture, of course, is what is our immigration system actually doing to stop people like this coming in the first place? There's no guarantee that actually people with criminal records aren't already coming in. People that are ne'er-do-wells and offer very little aren't being given visas left, right and centre. And I think that's another thing that we need to consider here. Hundreds of thousands of people come in each year without providing a criminal record certificate. We don't know their backgrounds. They could very well also have similar sort of histories as these individuals.
And don't you think, I think this, I'm sure you think this, I'm sure everybody across the country is saying, well, what kind of a nation are we? I mean, why haven't we got the backbone to tell murderers and rapists, we're kicking you out of the country, bye-bye? Why have we got to give them £2,000 to go? Why can't we just say, we don't want you here, you're out of here?
It's pathetic, and it really does make us...
It is pathetic, that is the word.
It makes us an absolute laughingstock. But again, I think what it is it's policymakers trying to be as clever as possible and play within the rules, however restrictive they are, the human rights rules and all those appeals that are made to the right to family life, and the pushback that a lot of foreign national offenders do actually put up whilst we're trying to remove them. And I think someone's just come up with an idea, well, why don't we just effectively bribe them to leave the country? No matter what crime they've committed, we're effectively almost rewarding, sort of to an extent, their criminality. This is a ridiculous situation. I also think that this idea that we've got some kind of duty to ensure that they're sort of able to reintegrate themselves back into their country of origin society, I'm sorry, it's not our problem. We didn't sort of rear these monsters. These aren't people that are sort of the result of our socialisation processes. These are people that have come from another country and have been raised by that society, and they've committed the crimes, and it's therefore really not our problem as soon as they're on a plane and sent back to that country. It's just a disgrace.
Listen, folks, let me know what you think about this. I mean, I knew Labour liked to boast about, we're deporting thousands of migrants under the voluntary scheme. They keep quiet about the fact that, they often give them more than 2,000, 3,000, don't they? And I'd always assumed that they're talking about, migrants, normal migrants who haven't committed crimes. How about you go back to wherever you're from, here's £3,000. A bit like we did with about the 4 people we got to Rwanda. I'd always assumed that these were innocent people who we'd persuaded or bribed, if you like, with cash to go home. But now we love murderers and rapists. It's just...
It is ridiculous. I mean, I do think there is a place when it comes to removing illegal migrants to sort of maybe just giving them a little bump just because, and it's called voluntary returns, that process it is actually cheaper than us having to put them in manacles and ship them off to their country of origin in a quite assertive manner. And if we can kind of make people realise through the creation of a hostile environment, if they're here illegally, that you will be removed and we'll give you a bit of money if you'd go, I think that will speed up the process.
Well, one last point about this, and it's worth mentioning, is what Shabana Mahmood means when she says, this, I know this looks bad. She said, what did she say? It's not great. It doesn't look good out of context. Understatement of the century. What she means is it's more expensive to keep them in prison. But what she also means, and she said this in her extended interview, is that these people will stick around and fight their case to stay. So what we're talking about is murderers and rapists come out of jail, and they stick around and try and fight a case to stay. We should have a system where, no, you're a murderer, you're a rapist, you're a paedophile, you don't stay, you go. We've got to show some backbone. We can't carry on like this.
We're stuck in this obsession with sort of due process has to be delivered to every single person. And this is why I think the idea of a British Bill of Rights is actually a correct one, because it's something where, foreign nationals who have come to this country and committed crimes don't have the same access to proper appeals and to legal process that the Brit that was born in this country does have. I think we need to have a sort of separation, that the ability of the legal instruments that someone can access is contingent on their nationality and their citizenship, not just because they've stepped foot on British soil.
a guy called Hamid Kuskan. He's 51. He's a disaffected Muslim. Doesn't like Islam at all. He was staging a protest, perfectly legal protest, outside the Turkish consulate in Knightsbridge, very flash area of central London, burning the Koran. Legal. That is a legal protest. We don't have blasphemy laws. You're perfectly entitled to set fire to the Bible or the Koran or any other religious book if you want to. I wouldn't advocate it. I don't think it's a very nice thing to do, but if you want to, it's not against the law. That's about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. A Muslim guy called Musa Qadri, he's 59, lived nearby. He saw this, lost it, went back to where his place of residence, his house or flat, whatever it was, got a knife. And you're going to see this now. Here he comes, slash, look at this, dum, look at that. There's the burning Quran. He goes to the ground, he kicks, look at that. And all the time he's screaming, you insult my, look at that, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. In court yesterday, or in court this week, Southwark Crown Court, that guy, that maniac, that knife-wielding maniac, was sort of set free, was allowed to walk free from court by a judge who said, oh, previous exemplary character, but this crime, look at that, for God's sake, clearly crosses the custodial threshold. The judge then proceeded not to send him to jail. He didn't put him into custody. And he said, oh, he told the police, I would protect my religion. And the judge said, well, yes, you're very upset because of your religion, previous exemplary behaviour, but I'm afraid it does cross the custodial line. And then he didn't put him into custody. He gave him a 20-week prison sentence, suspended for 18 months. Suspended sentences, folks, are ludicrous. It's the equivalent of just letting people off. So he walked free. Now, Hamid Kuskan today has, furiously slammed this and said this is two-tier justice. This is a court genuinely going easy on a guy because he's Muslim, because he's Islamic. And I don't think many other people, other types of people will get away with what we saw there. Let's speak to, now Hamid Kuskan has been represented throughout his ordeal. By the way, he got a 250 quid fine, 249 quid fine for religiously aggravated public disorder. He's appealing that sentence, that fine. He's appealing against that. But why did that guy? Why would that was a really vicious attack. You saw it. Why was he allowed to walk free? Is this two-tier justice? Is this a British court going easy on a guy because he's a Muslim? For fear of the charge of Islamophobia or something. Let's speak to, from the Free Speech Union, who, as I say, are representing Hamid Kuskan, Sam Armstrong. Hello, Sam.
Evening, Kev.
Well, you heard what I just said. What are your thoughts? Judge Adam Hiddleston gave Qadri a 20-week prison sentence, suspended for 8 months. I don't know why they bother with this nonsense. They might as well say, well, Mr. Qadri, I'm letting you go. I'm letting you off. And that's essentially what it was. Mr. Kuskan says this is two-tier justice. This is favouritism towards Musa Qadri because he's a Muslim. Do you concur?
Well, consider the situation in which the shoe was on the other foot. Perhaps there was a stall in the centre of a town somewhere in this country in which a white Christian man heard a Muslim Jew preacher, someone who's trying to proselytise people on behalf of Islam. Perhaps they were saying that they did not believe that Jesus was the Son of God and that Muhammad was instead the true prophet of God, and Islam was his true religion. Imagine that they went into their house, retrieved a knife, went back out into the street, repeatedly shouted that they were going to kill that person, forced them to the ground as they slashed them again and again and again and again with that knife. Can you imagine that a man in those circumstances, a white Christian man slashing at a Muslim who was trying to convert others to the cause of Islam, would not have been sent to prison? Honestly, hand on heart, someone who's worked in and around politics basically his entire life, I can't tell you that, Kev, because they wouldn't have been. They would have been sent down for as long as humanly possible. They wouldn't have been charged, as Musa Kadri was, for common assault and possession of a knife. They'd have been charged with what he ought to have been charged with, attempted murder. They could have possibly been charged even with a terrorist offence. The police don't care, they're not interested. In the video that's playing now, there was another man who was driving, surprise, surprise, a takeaway delivery bike, who kicks Hamid Koskan when he's on the ground repeatedly.
Oh yeah, I can see that now, yeah.
You can see that now. Had the police even bothered to track him down? No, they haven't. On the other hand, Hamid Koskan was prosecuted by the most senior barristers in the country, who threw the book at him for burning his own copy of the Koran. Kev, I wish it wasn't true. I wish I didn't have to come on television late at night and say that we lived in a country in which there were two standards of justice. One standard if you're in vogue at the minute, and one standard if you're speaking out about Islam or the climate madness or gender or everything else. But the sad reality is you just cannot get away from it, and it breaks your heart as someone who cares for the institutions of this country.
Absolutely. I spoke to Jake Berry, the former Tory party chairman, Sir Jake Berry, last night, and now, of course, with Reform. He called this a dark day for British justice. I also spoke to the eminent barrister, Stephen Barrett, and he said this is a disgrace. He says, because what we have here, this is this guy cannot say, oh, in the heat of the moment, I had an explosion of temper, I lost my temper and attacked him, because he saw Hamid Koskan in the perfectly legal process of staging a protest by burning the Koran. He saw this and went back to his place of residence to get a knife and then came back. That, in the world of law, is called premeditation. And a premeditated attack like that should not be rewarded with no custodial sentence. It's a disgrace, I think.
Well, and they're sending a message. There's a message. It's inescapable. If you're a Muslim person who feels offended at somebody denigrating your religion, you can go and commit as much violence as you seek to, and the state will not only will it not send you to prison, it will criminally prosecute the person who you feel has offended your religion. And just consider the fate at the end of it. This man has been spared prison despite the fact that he's been literally videotaped threatening to kill somebody as he stabs them repeatedly. He has been spared prison. Hamid Koskan, on the other hand, now lives in hiding. He has been warned repeatedly by the police that there are multiple credible threats to his life. And at the end of this, can you not wonder why someone who came to this country, fled to this country, he's a genuine refugee who came from Turkey after having been imprisoned for 10 years for having protested against Islam there. Can you not wonder why, or can you not see why they think, well, what was the point in coming to Britain in the first place? This was not the Britain I read about. This was not the Britain I was led to believe. In fact, the same Islamists that took over my own country in Turkey, well, they seem to be ruling the roost here.
They certainly do. Toby Young, Lord Young, your colleague at the Free Speech Union, a friend of mine as well, he said that this sentencing, this lenient sentencing, lack of a custodial sentence, and by the way, I don't think either you, me or Toby are the type of people say, bang them up, throw away the key, justice. We're not those kind of people. I recoil from that kind of sentiment, but you see that video. That is bad. That is bad. Anyway, Toby said that this lenient sentencing sends a green light to any Muslim who wants to enforce an Islamic blasphemy by taking the law into their own hands. The court is effectively saying that if you attack a blasphemer with a knife, he will be convicted of harassment, alarm and distress, and you won't have to spend a day behind bars. This is, I'm afraid, Sam, it's quite clear, two-tier justice. And I saw that video that we've just watched again last night, and it's quite shocking, isn't it? The viciousness of the attack.
But it's more than that, Kev. It is, and I apologise for putting it this highly, it is de facto Sharia law. It is sending a message to people on the streets of London that if you cross or transgress across a line of Islamic law that is written in there, that you mustn't denigrate the Prophet or his words in the Quran, that you can go out and you can seek violent retribution in the same way as Sharia law prescribes. That is the message that's been sent to people on that side of the ledger. And in that way, Donald Trump is right about what is happening in Sadiq Khan's London. But consider the message on the other hand. If you speak out about what's going on in our country, especially if you get it wrong, if you go over the line and cross the line, as Lucy Connolly undoubtedly did, but in one swiftly deleted tweet, well, what's your fate then? Lucy Connolly didn't stab anyone. She didn't threaten to kill anyone. She didn't repeatedly stab someone. She didn't do it in a premeditated fashion. What was her fate? 31 months in prison. A mother.
Exactly.
It is disgraceful.
I couldn't agree with you more. And Qadri, during this altercation, this explosive altercation, said, "Burning the Koran, it's my religion. You don't burn the Koran." He later told the police, "I protect my religion." People like Qadri, they do actually feel that, you know, it's against, that it is illegal to burn their book. It is illegal, or somehow or other transgresses some unwritten law, that you insult their religion. I don't think that people like Qadri can get it through their heads. As I say, it's not a nice thing to insult a religion or burn a religious tract. But people like Qadri, they cannot get it through their heads, you know, that this isn't Syria, this isn't Afghanistan, this is Great Britain. And in Great Britain, you can burn the Quran as a protest. And we can, if we want to, Mr. Qadri, insult your religion as well. This is the problem. Culturally, I think particularly people from the Islamic faith don't quite understand that we can laugh at their faith if we want to, we can insult it, and we can burn their holy book. As I say, I wouldn't advocate it. I don't think it's a nice thing to do, but it's legal. It's all part and parcel of freedom of expression, and we have to get that message across, don't we?
Yeah, well, look, let me be blunt. I am not a Muslim. I do not believe in Allah. I do not believe that Muhammad was his messenger. I do not believe that anything that is written down in the Quran is the word of God. That is the view of the vast majority of people in this country. It is not unacceptable. It is not extreme. It is not outrageous. It does not warrant death to say so in this country. And I can only thank my well, whatever, that we are not in the United States, for example, where these people would have access to guns, because the same instinct that ran through Musa Qadri, in my view, as he repeatedly stabbed Hamid Koskan, ran through the killer of Charlie Kirk, the killer of the people that attempted to kill our immigration and customs enforcement agents today in America, which is, if you disagree with someone politically, if you disagree with what they're saying, you can stab, kill or shoot them. That is a real problem in our country. It's a real problem across the Western world. It's growing worse and worse and worse. And the longer our politicians don't do anything about that, the more likely we are to see people on this country seriously getting killed. And that's the dangerous consequence of a message being sent like it was this week in court.
Absolutely. And looking at that video, let me ask the audience, I mean, that was not when he was doing this with them, that was not performative. He was trying to stab him and he got away with it.